My family comes from Rwanda. My parents live there now with my little brother. They retired and moved back. I was born in Kenya because that's just where my family happened to be when I was born, but we came to Canada when I was a year old. And I grew up here. I still live here. And that's, London, Ontario is specifically where I grew up, but I've lived kind of all over the place. So my parents left Rwanda in 1959 when there was a conflict there, so my parents were just kids at that time and were refugees all over Central and East Africa. Interestingly, actually lived in a lot of the same places, but never met. Growing up in London, Ontario, so we arrived in 1983. At that time, there was so few Africans, and I don't even just say Rwandans, but Africans in London, that my dad actually started the first African Association of London. So people, it doesn't matter where you're from Africa, you can come to this, these different events. So you would have Rwandese dancing there, you would have gumboot dancing there, you would have, at those community events. I don't remember an age where I wasn't aware, going back to 6, maybe even 5 years old, where I wasn't aware that I would look different, and that expectations of me were different. That's an awareness I don't remember not having. One thing I learned from my parents that I think was very important was pride, and not like a puff out your chest kind of pride, but I always felt a sense of, I know where I come from dignified people. But the most important lesson that my parents taught me, that I remember my mom kind of speaking to me, was you don't have to reinforce any stereotypes. You don't have to live up to any stereotypes that are out there, and it's not your job to break down any stereotypes that are out there. Your job is to be you. You have every right to be excellent. You have every right to be average. The most important thing is that you're a quality human being who care for people. Meeting all sorts of family that I'd never met before was very interesting. Day after day, probably meeting 10 people that I'm related to that I didn't know before. So there was a sense of belonging, but also a sense of, this is not home. This is actually a place that I'm visiting, because home, in terms of familiarity, is Canada. So interesting mix of feelings. The awareness of what happened in '94 in Canada, I think, happened later. I'm not exactly sure why it happened later. Maybe it was Romeo and Juliet's book or something like that. So that's when, because prior to that, people, they knew I was from Rwanda, but they didn't know anything about Rwanda until, I wouldn't even say '94, but in Canada, sometime after '94, when what happened in Rwanda actually became a bigger part of people's consciousness. So that's a whole experience, and I've kind of talked about it a little bit in my music of, just what that was like to watch that happen at an age where I don't fully understand everything that's happening in the depth of it. What people associate with me will be different from the other African Canadians that end up with some level of public profile. And that diversity is what really excites me, because that's what humanizes us, is when people can go, yes, these are people with a range of experiences. And so that's probably what excites me the most about that. So I'm very proud of that. That's a function of just where we are in history. As I said, in the early 80s, there wasn't a lot of African Canadians. And now, I'm part of the first wave to come of age and to get out there in Canadian society and, and contribute something. I want my kids to to have a sense that they come from somewhere. They didn't appear out of thin air. They're not rootless. They are rooted people, and that there is so much beauty in where they come from, and strength in where they come from. That's very important to me, that they have that pride. I want Rwanda to grow and to have it to do, and to have what, the dignity and the quality of life that every human being deserves to have. As far as what I can contribute to that, I see myself as a picture of what goes on in this world. I'm a product of this entire planet, not just one place. But also I hope to just contribute everything that I've learned, in forms like we have today, or whatever I can do. I can't. Rapping isn't the most practical skill as far as developing a country, but I really hope to contribute whatever I've learned and help the next generation contribute as well.